Oh, hello, hello. Happy Friday. Sretan Patak. I am Sarah of Expat in Croatia, and this is 5 Question Friday. Every Friday at 5 o'clock Croatia time, I answer 5 questions about Croatia from people who have sent them in on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, expatinCroatia.com, YouTube, my consulting sessions, and people who tap them out in Morse code. I don't know if that's Morse code. It probably isn't. I'm just tapping on a picnic table. I am at Klis Fortress. I don't know if I'm allowed to be here, but my friend and I just came in anyways and decided to do it here because today is our military episode. It seemed like the right setting for this episode. So I'm just going to quickly take you to show you where I'm at. Have you been to Klis Fortress before? I have been to Klis Fortress at least a dozen times. Every single time someone comes to visit, I bring them up here. This is where they filmed part of Game of Thrones. It's a really cool spot, and it's been really interesting to see how they've improved it over the years. It's been really impressive because at one time it was just a lawsuit waiting to happen. All right, let me show you where I am. So Klis is a little village perched up on this like craggy, rocky pass that is by Split, I guess, outside of Split. Okay, so I'm going to show you the fortress first behind me. And then this is the valley in front of Klis. Okay, so now I'm going to do some pointing. So that is Split there. You can see Marion Hill there in the distance. That bump over there is Chiovo. That's an island. Then that's island Sholta. And then that's island Brač. And then back behind those islands are Vis and Hvar. So this is a really nice spot, guys. And it's kind of cool to come up here because, I don't know, it has a lot of nostalgia for me coming up to Klis Fortress. I don't know how many people know this, but I used to have a tour company for Game of Thrones. And this was one of the tour's main stops. I was not a tour guide. I just, I did all the selling. All right, hang on a second, guys. This thing is not smooth in terms of putting you back on here. There we go. Hi, there you are. Okay, so let me tell you about a few things and then we're going to get into it. And just as a reminder, today we are talking about Croatia's mandatory military service. So all of the questions are related to that. I understand it's a really big deal. So we're going to try and answer some more questions for you today. But quickly, I want to tell you about what's been going on and what's in the week ahead. So nothing new this week, really, but I will tell you about what's going to be new over the course of the next week before next Friday. So tomorrow, I'm going on a day sail with 3 of my most favorite people. And I love this day sail. I do it every summer. It's, my opinion, the best one that there is because you can be in a private situation where you're not with a bunch of tourists. And I love that. And the couple who own it, John and Lynn, like this is their sailboat. They own it. It's not just one that they rent to do day sails. They're from Scotland. And John is an excellent cook. They're wonderful hosts. And it's just, I just love this experience. I feel like $1 million after it. So this year I'm doing it tomorrow. So it'll be from 10 to 6, I think. They're going to pick us up on West Coast and Split. And I'm just so jazzed. We've been counting down the days. We booked this like 2 months ago. And every time I see my friends who are coming with me, they're like, Sarah, I can't wait. Sarah, I can't wait. Sarah, I can't wait. And I'm like, I know. I'm on the edge of my seat too, and I'm vibrating now that it's like less than 24 hours away. So keep a lookout on stories tomorrow because I will be on the Adriatic Sea in little bays around Sholta and Brač. Sunday, I'm going to Sholta, and I've been to Sholta like twice. I've been on land on Sholta, only twice. I've never actually spent the night on Sholta. My impression is that Sholta is underrated and undervalued because, you know, it's in a cluster with Vis and Hvar and Brač and Korčula, and everybody goes to those islands. They don't really go over to Sholta. So I'm going there. Our colleague Tamara has a glamping site, and she invited me to come and stay for a couple of nights in her glamping tent. So a friend of mine and I are going to go out and do that. So the glamping site is in the middle of like a really old olive orchard that is her family's. So that's going to be super cool as well. So again, I will put on stories. And then on Wednesday, I'm going to the island of Capri. Have you been? Do you know anything about it? So my friend Jason, who was on an episode of Five Question Friday 2 years ago, he is my friend from England. I met him in Amsterdam. He lives in Slovenia. So he joined me on an episode when I was up there for his birthday a couple of years ago. So I will be doing next Friday's 5 questions from Capri, which is one of the 7 islands in Croatia that does not have cars. And as you may recall, in May, I was on Susak, which is another one of those islands that does not have cars. So this is a very tiny island. It only has 160 year-round residents, and it's going to be a pretty neat experience. So Capri means caper, like caper berries, because apparently they grow a lot of them there, and I intend to eat a lot of them. So I'm pretty stoked about all those things. And that's it for now. Oh, one more thing I have to tell you. Wednesday, before I drive to Capri, so I have to drive to Šibenik and then take a ferry to Capri. It's only 1 hour, so it's not that big a deal. But in the morning, before I start driving, I have an interview with SBS in Australia. And what I've been told is this is the biggest radio network in Australia, and they are translated into 90 different languages, and one of those being Croatian. And so they have a big Croatian audience. And so I'm going to be interviewed for that on Wednesday morning. Yay! So that should be super fun. Yay! I'm excited about it. So when that comes out, I will keep you posted and share it with you. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. If you're just joining us, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for being here. I'm at Klis Fortress in the village of Klis on this big rocky mountain here, which is north of Split, I suppose, with my friend in the background that you cannot see. Okay, so today we are talking about Croatia's mandatory military service. So as a reminder, Croatia has not had mandatory military service since 2008. So since 2008, military service has only been voluntary, okay? But now, starting January 1st, 2025, it is going to be mandatory for a certain block of people. That block of people being young Croatian men, okay? So they have not passed the law yet. They're in the middle of drafting the law, but right now Parliament is on holiday, so nothing is going to happen right now. It's not going to be until the earliest, like probably the second half of September. And once we actually have the law, we're going to know a lot more. There's so many things that we don't know right now, but there is a lot of stuff that we do know. We do have a very detailed post that we published last week about this. If you are on YouTube, it is down in the description. If you're on Instagram, send us a DM. We'll be happy to shoot that over to you. So I've plucked out 5 questions of the questions that we've gotten from everybody that I'm going to answer today, okay? So let me go ahead and get started with Sophia. She asks, why are they doing this now? That's a great question. Why are they doing this now? Well, the reason that they give officially, which I think makes sense and it tracks, is that they don't have enough people in the military for military preparedness. So what they have estimated that they need every year is 1,000 new recruits to meet their military preparedness goals. However, they are far below that. So in 2021, they only had 150 new recruits, and in 2022, they only had 400 new recruits. So that's way below 1,000. Right now, the military is comprised of 15,000 active soldiers and 2,000 reservists. So that is the reason that they are doing this now. Okay? Gosh, it is hot out here. I'm kind of, anyways, that's the reason. Now, being an observer of the world, we also have like a war that's going on in the north of Europe, and Croatia is part of different alliances, is part of the European Union, and It is entirely possible that one day Croatian soldiers are going to be called for something. But at a bare minimum, Croatia needs to be able to protect itself. So that is the reason that they are doing this now, or at least the reason that they've said, and that makes sense. Okay? So thank you, Sophia, for asking that question. The next one, this is, okay, so two people asked this question. Okay? Anonymous says, will this only apply to people who are currently soon to be 18 years old? And then Alexis asks, is it going to start with year one where they begin with all those 18 years old and graduating school next year and move forward with including each successional year? So it's the same question, but phrased two different ways. We don't know who they're going to start with first, okay? They have not explained that. All we can do is kind of make assumptions. So one of the things that they said as part of this announcement is that there are 18,000 Croatian men who turn 18 each year, okay? So the assumption that we are making is that they are going to start with the freshly turned 18-year-olds, and then they're going to go from there, okay? Now, something to keep in mind is they're not going to call up all 18,000 at a time. They've already been clear about this. They're only planning on calling 4,000 to 4,500 at a time. So it's not like everyone's going to be called. And it's entirely possible that if you are a young Croatian man, you may never be called. That is a possibility. But it's also a possibility that you will be, okay? So the next question comes from Jen. Would this be required if you are a permanent resident? So this is only for Croatian citizens. You can only serve in the military. It doesn't matter whether it's mandatory or volunteer if you are a Croatian citizen. So if you're not a Croatian citizen and you are not a man, this does not apply to you. So women still only can only join the military on a volunteer basis now, okay? All right, so this brings us to our lawyer tip of the week. And, so this week, the lawyer tip is focused on this military service. So there's a few things that we wanted to remind you of in some very plain terms, okay? So don't let the news of military service stop you from applying for citizenship. There are a lot of benefits to having Croatian citizenship, including freedom to live, work, and study within the European Union. You are also not subject to income taxation if you do not reside in Croatia for more than 183 days per year. Remember that you can object to military service or if you are called for conscriptions, and instead you can serve Croatia and the Croatian community in a civil manner through infrastructure projects, social protection, disaster response, and first aid. Also, at the moment, Croatia doesn't have the infrastructure needed to deploy every eligible man in the age group. So it is to be expected that only a small number of people will actually be called, and most likely they will not start with people living abroad. Croatia can change its laws at any time, as you can see, because of this new law that's coming. You never know when they will change the law to restrict citizenship. For example, they could require the language culture test again, which was previously a huge barrier to many Croatian diaspora living abroad. Citizenship lasts a lifetime. Serving Croatia through military or civil service will only last 2 to 6 months if you are called at all. These are all great points, because I know that there are a lot of parents abroad that are concerned about their sons because they've already applied for citizenship for them, or maybe they have citizenship and they're about to turn 18. I mean, realistically speaking, it's going to be harder for Croatia to try and get Croatian diaspora to come back from abroad. It doesn't mean they're not going to call you necessarily. They may, and we don't know for certain if they are going to require them to come back to Croatia. That's an open question. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. But nevertheless, that shouldn't be a reason to not get citizenship. Okay? All right. Next question. We have two. So one comes from Johnny O 2000. Is there an age cutoff? I'm 49 and just became a dual citizen. The next one comes from Dragan Teskanica, and he said this in Croatian, so I'm going to go ahead and say it in Croatian, okay? and I might butcher it a little bit, but I promise I'll translate it into English afterwards. Meni samo zanima koja će biti gornja dobna granica za obveznike. So this means I'm just curious, what will be the upper age limit for obligees? So they both have the exact same question. So they have not announced that yet. What the highest limit is, we know it's going to be 18 on the younger side, but we don't know the upper age limit. I'm going to speculate. And I want to communicate this is pure speculation on my part, but I'm going to tell you why I'm speculating. So I think it's either going to be 27 or 30, and this is the reason. So 27 is the oldest you can be to become a professional soldier in Croatia. And then 30, or rather 1 day before you turn 30, is the last day that you can be sent for military training as a military volunteer. So that is why I think it's going to be 27 or 30. But once they have the draft of the law, we should know what that upper age limit is. Okay. So our last question comes from Maria. How is Croatia treating the mandatory military service for non-resident citizens who have never resided in Croatia, e.g. children of diaspora who may have citizenship? And then Anonymous asks, my youngest just finished university. He has booked a flight to Australia where he was born for January 2025 to spend a couple of years there. He's a dual citizen and has spent 22 years here. How will this affect his plans? So when military service was last implemented, and as a reminder, I said this at the start of this episode, it was last mandatory in 2008. That's when they decided to do away with mandatory military service and switch to just voluntary service, okay? When it was last implemented, they did require citizens abroad to participate. So there is a possibility that they will do that again, okay? So that's something that one should be prepared for. But as I alluded to a little while ago, it's going to be much more difficult for them to call up Croatian citizens who are living abroad. It's not going to be the place they start most likely because of how much effort that is going to take for them to find you abroad, okay? So that's something to keep in mind. Now, to this anonymous mother who's talking about her son who's planning to move to Australia in January 2025, my recommendation would be to make sure that he unregisters at the police, like cancels his residence so that they know he's no longer going to be living in Croatia. And January 2025 is when this is going into effect. We don't know when, just because the law gets enacted on January 1st, 2025 does not mean that January 2nd they are going to start calling people up. We don't know that that's what that means. And I'll give you an example. I know it's not a total apples to apples, but it's going to give you an idea. They implemented the digital nomad part of the new law on January 1st, 2021. Anyways, they couldn't actually get it up and running until March, so there's usually a delay to implementation, even if the law is already active. So that's something to keep in mind. So whenever if you live in Croatia and then you want to leave Croatia, you should always unregister from the police. Always, always, always. Always. It doesn't matter whether you're a foreigner. It doesn't matter whether you're Croatian. Always let the police know, okay? So if he unregisters from the police, like let's say November, December, in anticipation of leaving in January, then when the year changes over, he will no longer be a registered resident. And so most likely, again, this is speculation, but most likely he will then be put further down the list because he will not be a resident anymore. That is one option. The other option is that he voluntarily serves in, January and February and gets it over with and then moves on with his life. That's also another option. So you can, if you fit that bracket, that age bracket of young Croatian men, you can just go and do this, the civil or the military service, and then just get it out of the way. That's absolutely an option. And I would say if you're a college student, it's something that you may want to consider. Okay? So those are all the questions for today. So as a reminder, the Parliament is on holiday until mid-September, so absolutely nothing is going to happen between now and then. And once they go back into session, then that's when they're going to finalize the draft of the law, and then they have to go through a reading where they read it out in Parliament, and then it's going to go through some edits, and then they're going to do the second reading, and then it has to be passed. So we've got a little bit of time before then, but once we have a draft, which they always post online for feedback, we're going to know so much more. We have lots of open questions in our guide on expatandcroatia.com. We have a list of all the open questions that we are collecting, and we will find answers to. So as you have questions, as things sprout to your mind, please do not hesitate to drop a comment, send us a DM, because we are logging all those questions, and we will find out the answer for you. Hi, Queenie. Thank you so much for joining. I noticed that something came through from somebody, and I'm too far away to read it this way. So let's see. Hey, Mark. Welcome. There is a Croatian citizenship Facebook site reporting that consulates will be contacting all affected diaspora to have them complete a form to waive young men from service. Have you heard this? I haven't. I haven't. And the only waiver that we have heard about, or that we read about directly from the announcements from the Ministry of Justice, is that you can only conscientiously object, which is actually a reference to the Constitution of the Republic of Croatia. So if you get called for military service, you can say, I don't want to do the military service, I don't want to hold a gun, and in which case you have to do civil service instead. So I haven't heard of this, Mark, but I'll look into it anyways, for sure. I'd be very curious about that. Okay, that's it for this week, guys. Oh, I forgot. Let me tell you about the stuff I've got for you, because we're doing this on one topic, so I'm doing it at the end rather than intermix. So as again, we have a guide, a very detailed guide that goes over everything we've talked about today, but in much greater detail, in addition to a lot of other things, a lot of other aspects of serving in the military in Croatia, both as a volunteer as well as professionally, if you would like to be a professional soldier, which is a little bit different. If you are on YouTube, that's in the description. If you are on Instagram, send us a DM. Also, we have a guide on how to cancel your residence if you are leaving Croatia, which is really important. That's for Croatians as well as foreigners. And then also, we're going to be publishing updates in our Tuesday newsletter. So if you're not already subscribed, highly recommend it. That's where we put actionable Croatian news, our latest posts, and a bunch of other goodies to kind of keep you up to date on what's going on in Croatia. So we do put extra information there that we do not share on social media. There is a link to subscribe to that down in the description for YouTube, or you can find it, the link in our profile on Instagram, or you can send us a DM too. Okay, so that's it. So as a reminder, do we have something else? Jeff's Travels. Is there any talk about adding resources to consulates and MUP to process the large amount of citizenship applications? Woo! No. I have not heard of anything like that. I will say I'm surprised they haven't done anything yet, but I don't know how many resources they have, or let me rephrase, how much they want to allocate. It has become clear, or from our observations, when they changed the citizenship law in 2020 to open it up to more people, specifically they did away with the language culture test, which I know is a big barrier for a lot of diaspora who don't speak any Croatian. They also removed the limit on how many generations back you can go. They also made it very easy so your spouse can apply at the same time. There wasn't consistency in the preparedness of the consulates. And now there's a giant backlog. So I do know that MUP is trying to hire more people here in Croatia. We haven't seen an indication that they're trying to hire more people at the consulates. And that's pretty tough. The consulates, it does not seem that they've been given the resources to deal with the influx that they have been presented with. So for example, the LA consulate, which is notoriously takes longer than the other ones. And there's a reason why. It's because they represent 19 U.S. states, and there's only one woman processing citizenship there. Just one. Like, wow. That's a tough gig. That's an absolute tough gig. So no, we haven't seen any signs that they're hiring more people at the consulates, but they are trying to hire more people internally here at the ministry within Croatia. So great question, Jeff. If we see anything else happening, certainly we'll let you know. JACA 28, do you know how they might handle dual citizens with only temporary boravište for 2 years? With regards to military service, I don't know that it's going to matter. I don't think it's going to matter whether you've been here for 2 years or 5 years. They're just going to look at the fact that you have citizenship. Now, something we did get a question, and I thought about putting it on here, but in the end, I didn't because I would really like us to do more due diligence on this. But someone was asked, a few people asked, like, what if you don't speak Croatian? What if you are a Croatian citizen, but you don't actually speak Croatian? How are you going to serve in the military? So our colleague Cam knows somebody who's in the military, and apparently English is a big part of being in the Croatian military because they want to make sure everybody in the military does speak English. So there are English classes, which I thought was interesting. But nevertheless, you still need to have some level of Croatian to be able to function properly. Now, that's definitely an immersive environment. That would be a way to learn for sure. But so we're going to continue to talk to more people. We've got some feelers out to different people who've served in the Army. There's actually someone who gave some feedback on YouTube who served in the 90s, and it sounded like he was serving alongside people who did not speak Croatian. So I've reached out to him to see if he'd be willing to talk a little bit more about what that experience was like. But yeah, my guess is they're going to have some kind of hierarchy with who they call and when they call them, but they have not disclosed that yet. But we're keeping an eye on it. All right, let's see if there's any other questions. No, there aren't. Okay, so that's it, guys. Thank you so much for being here. Next week, we will go back to our usual grab bag, hodgepodge, eclectic batch of questions, which I already prepared this morning, a week early. So that's rare for me. That's rare. But yeah, we'll go back to normal. But if you still have questions about the military service, please don't hesitate to ask them, and we'll do everything we can to find out answers. But again, be patient. I know this is a big deal. I know this is causing people a lot of anxiety, understandably so. But understand that they're on holiday. Parliament's not going to do anything for at least the next 7 weeks. So that's the earliest we would hear anything. But my guess is it's not going to be the day that they get back. Okay. So thanks. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. I hope you're staying cool wherever you are. I am not, which is why this hat is remaining on. I look like a wet rat under here. Yeah. Anything else? Did I leave anything out? He says no. He says no. Okay, all right. Well, thank you for being here. And until next Friday, which I will be on Capri Island next Friday, so I hope you'll tune in. Vidimo se. Ciao, ciao, ciao.